Okay, Rick and Morty, let's go. Season, whatever season this is, episode, I think 4. Totally not tired. It's totally not 3 in the morning when I'm recording this. All of my energy is coming from pure actual excitement and not caffeinated tea. Yes, let's go. Rick and Morty. Woo! Yeah, 100 years, huh? Right? You all know the joke. Okay. Guys, this week's Rick and Morty was tonally one of the most unique episodes this show has ever seen. And while we can just appreciate it for the funny ha-has and bumping synth soundtrack and just how pretty it could be at times, I mean, my lord, you know why we're really here. To dig deep and talk about what this episode was really trying to convey about these characters and the current state of their relationship with Rick. The season premiere was all about Rick's relationship with himself. After that, we checked in on Morty's feelings through Roy. Last week, we saw how Beth continues to mirror her father, and this week scratched the surface on Summer's relationship with Rick and how she might, actually resent this man. Let's waste no time and unpack the insane implications of Rick and Morty, Season 6, Episode 4, Night Family. Let's start with a quick recap, aka this is just a Jordan Peele movie. Night Family opens up with an excerpt from the poem Fragment of an Agony by T.S. Eliot. Although the episode leaves out the last few words, the excerpt reads, "When you're alone in the middle of the night and you wake up in a sweat and a hell of a fright, when you're alone in the middle of the bed and you wake like someone hit you on the head, you've had a cream of a nightmare dream and you've got the hoo-ha's coming to you." I'm a level with you guys. I did not know this is a real poem. It just sounded really goofy and I figured it was like a parody of a poem, but hey, the more you know. So, some fun trivia. This fragment was intended to be a part of a longer play. Sweeney antagonizes fragments of an Aristophanic melodrama, but it landed in the publication of Eliot's collected poems as an unfinished poem. But here's the thing. I don't think this was completely meant to be an elaborate poem the writers pulled from to leave us in deep thought and decipher the ways it relates to the overall themes of the episode. I think it's just meant to take the piss out of Jordan Peele films, because Night Family is basically just an homage to Jordan Peele. Both Us and Nope open with some sort of statement, that being a piece of trivia in Us and a Bible quote in Nope, that tie into the story and broader themes of both films. Though at the time of this episode's production, only Us was released, so it's safe to say they just made a lucky guess and this becoming a part of Peele's style. The episode's premise is basically a spin on both Get Out and Us, the body-jacking surrealness of Get Out, combined with the bizarro doppelganger horror of Us, right down to the gravelly voices of their night selves, but we'll get more into that later. The episode opens with Beth awakened by Jerry's ear-grating snoring and decides to go sleep on the couch, where she's startled by the presence and sight of Rick doing mad crunches in his sleep. The following morning, Rick explains that he bought a device called a subnabulator that programs Rick's unconscious body, or his night person, to perform tasks while he sleeps. Naturally, the entire family wants in. Rick caves, and needless to say, hijinks ensue. Also, the subnabulator is a riff on the term subnabulate, which means to walk when asleep, which they do a lot more than walking in this episode. Let's just get into it. At first, everything is going perfect, and it's only making their lives better. Summer's learning Spanish, Beth's picked up a new instrument, and both Rick and Morty have supreme washboard abs. So successful, they were able to build an entire podcast around it. Jerry's happy too with the simple task of just being a pen pal with his night person. Even though everyone makes fun of him, Jerry always defends whatever lame stuff he's doing, whether it's a puzzle or communicating with his subconscious self. However, because this is Rick and Morty, things quickly take a turn. Jerry tells the family that his night person made a request, something that they're not really supposed to do. He wants them to clean their dishes better, something that Rick immediately takes offense to, putting his foot down saying that they work for them and that he'll never do anything for his night person. That's just not how the dynamic works. He receives a rude awakening the next morning when he finds that all their dishes have been broken by their night selves. And that's when it becomes overwhelmingly clear that the episode is taking an eerie turn. Something about something physically happening while you're asleep that you did but have no recollection of doing. I don't know, honestly, that's kind of freaky. So Rick, being as stubborn as he is, decides it would be easier to go off on a space adventure and create some indestructible dishes rather than just complying with his night self. Unfortunately, this is not enough to quell their anger. When Rick goes to sleep that night, he is woken up by his night family, and this is when they're revealed to be truly just fucking terrifying. They have glowing blue eyes, they talk like the Us people, and we learn the biggest bombshell of all in the hierarchy of the night family. Rick's not the top dog, and instead Summer is. They then torture him by forcing him to eat the crusty food off the plate he refuses to clean, and he wakes up the next morning throwing up. Rick immediately confronts Summer, only for them both to realize that the problem is a lot worse. The Night Family has launched a full-on attack on the Smith family, locking Rick out of all of his science equipment and keeping them prisoners in the house. Rick decides to improvise. He designs a suit to keep Summer permanently awake and sends her in as a fake deploy that night. Discovering the Night Family has an ulterior motive, a greater plan, to basically extend their consciousness to being full-time hosts of the body. The next next morning, Summer claims to have defeated them in her plan, but even that turns out to be a trap by the night Summer. I don't know how she does it, it just seems kind of convenient, but don't think too hard, it's fine. This is when things go from bad to worse. The Knight family flips the script completely and ends up enslaving them, forcing them to work all day and go into these sleep pods at night. This is where the us metaphor kind of comes into play a little bit. You realize like there's some cleverness in making people work for you and class systems, but it's great and would be explained better by somebody who's a lot smarter, but you get the gist from watching the episode. Also, my favorite part of the episode I want to mention is just this DVD gag where Beth is forced to sort out of like day and night DVDs. It's a nice touch, it feels like classic Rick and Morty. Imprisoned by their night selves, Rick admits that he actually has no way out of this situation, especially since portal technology is still broken. That's when the episode takes yet another twist. Jerry leaves a note to his night self, harkening back to their old pen pal days, asking for help, and you realize, oh my god, are we gonna see Jerry save the day, which is always satisfying. And that's exactly what happens. Jerry's night self wakes up the family and helps them escape the house. There's a funny moment with their neighbor Gene. They escape, getting into a high-speed car chase with night person Summer. There's a fun climax sequence, a lot of explosions, and it ultimately all comes down to Night Jerry trying to broker a deal of peace between the two families, as long as Rick can just admit to clean his dishes, something he'd rather lose than actually do, leading to the night people winning and the credits rolling. We see their victory in the background, they go on vacation, it's kind of funny, and at this point I had no idea where the episode was going. Then we see the actual ending. It's a while later, and the night versions of the family have completely drained their finances and decide it's actually legitimately hard to live during the day and be full-time people. So they give their consciousness back to their day versions, and the episode wraps up on the sad conclusion that they've canceled the Choco Taco. This episode was a wild ride to say the least. It felt like some classic Rick and Morty shenanigans, and overall it was just so funny. I'm glad they're doing one-offs like this. But with Rick and Morty, there's always something worth exploring in the episode, and this time it's definitely Summer's relationship with Rick. Does Summer low-key hate Rick? So here's the thing. The sheer existence of Night Summer speaks volumes about Summer and how many negative emotions towards her grandpa she represses, locking all the bad vibes away to the dark depths of her mind. Like, when I take a moment to really think about it, while Summer has checked Rick before, she hasn't blown up on him or confronted him in ways that Morty, Beth, and Jerry have, or at least in the ways Jerry's tried to. And it makes sense because Summer's kind of the only one who hasn't been directly affected by Rick's presence, the same way everyone else has. Morty was forced into adventures with him, stripping him of a normal life. Jerry lost his marriage for a hot sec, and Beth not only has extreme abandonment issues, but a literal double life thanks to her dad. These are all things that Summer has been indirectly affected by. But when it comes to her direct relationship with Rick, she kind of gets the best deal out of all of them. Don't get me wrong, Rick has led her through quite a bit of BS, given her quite a bit of trauma, and Naruto the incest baby, which again I'm refusing to acknowledge. And we just had the whole do a Die Hard situation, though the circumstances around that kind of forced her hand more than Rick did. Yet things tend to work out for the best at the end of every 22-minute adventure. And because her relationship with Rick has evolved into him generally respecting her, hanging out with her, and hooking her up with cool sci-fi gadgets, Summer feels as if she has no reason to hold a grudge against her grandfather. After all, she is Sum. They relate to each other due to his old man nihilism and her teen angst. But the reality is, Summer does have a reason to hold a grudge against Rick. Several, in fact. It doesn't matter that he hasn't fucked up her social life or personally wronged her in any way that affects the status quo. It seems that Summer, deep down, can't stand what Rick has done to the people she cares about. She never came to terms with what Rick did to Morty's original family and dimension, or the fact that for a moment, he really made it seem like he could care less if she died at the Citadel. She never got to process the fact that he momentarily tore the family apart by being the root of Beth and Jerry's divorce, because they got back together before she knew it. But we still had multiple episodes of her struggling to cope with it. And whenever we see Summer cope with her life, which has been plenty of occasions now, it's almost exclusively through the things that Rick provides to her life. Mostly crazy sci-fi stuff. The insane intergalactic adventures, the gizmos, the space drugs. These are all things that come from associating with Rick. Rick is how Summer copes with Rick. And now all of those unaddressed issues took the chance to manifest themselves into the evil mastermind that is Night Summer. And the worst part about all of this, Night Family makes it evident that Rick has no idea that Summer feels this way. He just wouldn't think twice about Summer, or if there were anything troubling about her perception of him. I do think it's interesting that even in this episode, Summer and Rick don't really feel the need to have an actual conversation about their relationship, and probably just wrote off Night Summer as the result of a bad product, or in Rick's case, a lesson on why he should have been the only one to have a night person. But as Night Summer says, she's something that's always been inside of Summer, festering, which is a really scary word. The final thing I want to cover is Summer's big bad potential. Night Summer's terrifying capability and performance as a leader actually got me thinking about how terrifying Summer's potential really is. and if an alternate reality Summer could end up becoming a huge threat in the show, having this episode serve as some crazy foreshadowing in the long term. And while that may sound like a stretch, Summer is the only character who hasn't had some kind of standout alternative version of them appear in the story. Rick has Rick Prime, Morty, of course, has Evil Morty, Beth has Space Beth, for better or worse, and Jerry even has fully arced out Cronenberg Jerry, although he's technically dead, but that makes him kind of even cooler. What all these variants have in common is they all represent a void of attachment. So, Night Family might have just shown us what's coming down the pipeline, even as far as 2 or 3 seasons from now. God, this show is never going to end. A Summer Smith who has been majorly screwed over by Rick, and thus has no real attachments. A Summer who's a great leader through sheer manipulation, just like Night Summer, who was able to convince Night Rick to turn against Day Rick, which means she convinced a part of Rick not to be selfish, which isn't an easy feat given the stalemate they were in. A Summer who wants to conquer by any means necessary, playing dirty and thinking quickly on her feet, because she's Rick's granddaughter. I mean, Evil Morty did lead the Citadel as president, so parallels could be drawn there, but his plan, at least at this stage, was to escape from the status quo and live in a dimension where Rick was no longer the smartest man alive. This is where a serialized antagonistic Summer could differ from Evil Morty, as she wants to conquer the status quo. Whereas Morty just wants to reclaim what Rick's stolen from him, Summer really wants to take everything Rick has to offer, to the point where even when she does lose something, it won't really feel like it, because there'll be a billion other things to fill that void. Summer has been a queen before and loved it, so the foreshadowing was already there. Perhaps this Summer could wind up being our Summer, finally disillusioned with Rick and very vocal about that disillusionment. But only time will tell. At the end of the day, Night Family made one thing clear. Something is brewing inside of Summer. And if her and Rick don't acknowledge these issues soon, it's gonna get ugly. At the very least, extremely scary, which is what the Night Family was. Let's just say I will be sleeping with the light on tonight. Judge all you want, I am not sorry. That being said, of course, I want to turn the question to you guys. What do you think about all of this? Do you think Summer has the potential to be a villain later on in the series, or at least have a villain? Do you agree with what we said? Do you disagree? Let us know in those comments down below, or tweet to us at Roundtable Vids, or me at Retro Nemo. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay in the loop with all things Rick and Morty. As always, guys, I'm Nemo. This is a Rick and Morty video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.